Well, coming up on today's show, Electrify America launched California's first ultra-fast charger. The Polestar 1 is seen on a YouTube video testing in the wild, and your answers to this week's question of the week. Those stories and more coming up today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. In fact, wherever you are in the world, welcome to EV News Daily. It's a Sunday, the 9th of December, but maybe you're catching up on this a couple of days later. Whatever you're doing, thank you for listening. Martyn here. I've been through all the EV stories I can find today, tried to whittle them down to the essential ones you need to know. Thank you to the gang at myev.com, as always, for helping make this show. They have built the world's first marketplace that successfully connects buyers and sellers in the electric vehicle world. If you're buying or selling or learning about EVs, check out myev.com. And thank you very much to Patreon supporters. 3 new names to add to the exec producer list. Executive producers supporting this show at the super posh coffee once a month level. That's, in other words, $10. But if that's you, thank you very much. And it is you, Jerry. Well, Jerry Allison is joining as an executive producer. Lars. I think I would say Lars' surname Dalager. What do you reckon? D-A-H Lager, as in lager. Dalager. Anyway, Lars, if I've got your name wrong, sorry. And Frederick Rovik. Thank you very much, Frederick Rovik, for being a new exec producer. Just looking at those 3 names that joined today as $10 a month or more on Patreon. Jerry, Lars, Frederick with a K. Just shows how the audience of this podcast is so international as well. And I can see from the download stats, people listening all around the world. Thank you very much for listening wherever you are today. Good news in California. Simon, the global leader in premier shopping, dining, entertainment and destinations, announced that its San Francisco outlets in California are going to be the first location for the EV charging systems from Electrify America, featuring the fast recharging speeds of 350 kilowatts, reports Green Car Congress. Simon teamed with Electrify America to open up the first 10 DC fast chargers at San Francisco's premium outlets, and purely for public use as well. The charging site features 8 chargers which are 150 kilowatts and 2 chargers which are 350 kilowatts, bearing in mind there's no car on the market today which can rinse it for 350 kilowatts. Not yet, anyway. It makes sense. There's only 2 of those, and there's 8 150 kilowatt chargers. The 350 kilowatt chargers are capable of recharging an EV at 20 miles a minute. That's 200 miles of driving range in 10 minutes, of course. See, I'm dead good at maths. That's a fantastic achievement for everyone that's been involved in EVs over the last 10 or 20 years and battery technology, to be able to have all of that technology in place. And it'll be commonplace in a couple of years. Stop for 10 minutes, 200 miles range, just fantastic. Well, a new 60-second videos hit YouTube today. Polestar, the spin-off of Volvo, the Polestar 1 is full speed ahead, testing their first production car. We've seen the company evaluating their structure of the plug-in hybrid in crash testing and doing very well. And now we're getting a look at the more dynamic nature of its handling, the takeoff velocities for jumbo jets on a wet banked track is the way that Christopher Smith puts it at motor1.com. It's got 600 horsepower. It's generated by a hybrid powertrain. That battery alone will do almost 100 miles of pure EV range. Going fast isn't a problem, but corralling that power isn't quite as simple. It's why the engineers at Polestar are slinging a prototype around wet corners at 140 miles an hour to find the limit and to see how hard they can push the car. An incredible car. I know it's a plug-in hybrid, and we don't normally rave about fossil cars on this podcast, but let's face it, the battery is big enough and powerful enough, 100 miles, to do pretty much all of your Monday to Friday stuff, never needing to touch the fossil engine, but when it does kick in, it's a very powerful, exciting car. Volkswagen Group CEO Herbert Diess and the board members met with more than 30 CEOs from their big suppliers at a supplier event recently, the MEB supplier event. MEB, by the way, if you're new to the podcast, that's the name of the platform upon which the Volkswagen Group, so not just the VWs, but all the cars, the brands in their family, that's the platform upon which their EVs will be made. VW's carefully preparing the launch of the all-electric ID family, says Mark Kane at InsideEVs.com today. The importance of the first model, the Volkswagen ID hatchback, is compared in every way to the first Beetle Or the first Golf. Production's going to begin at the end of next year, 2019, at the Zwickau plant in Germany. The original timeline is looking like it will be maintained, and the battery size, they say, is going to be very impressive for the Volkswagen ID. They are talking about beating 300 miles of real-world range. So it's a big battery pack going in. I'm sure there'll be smaller battery packs maybe along the line, or maybe they're just talking about the long-range model, but that's good that they're taking range seriously. And from the sexy Polestar that we mentioned earlier to something more everyday, and actually a car that will sell far more in terms of people putting them on their driveways. Vauxhall are being talked about in Autocar today. The next generation Vauxhall Mokka X. It's a small SUV. It's going into production in 2020, and they've confirmed it'll have a full electric powertrain. The move is part of PSA Group's plans to accelerate their electrification plans, which admittedly, maybe you're a little behind others, but they're catching up. The Vauxhall and Opel ranges, depending on where you are listening around the world, depends on whether you'll be driving the same car, but rebadged as Vauxhall or Opel. Plug-in hybrids will play a part, but full electric versions will also play a part of every single one of their models. And that includes a battery electric version of the next van. The Vivaro van is very popular. A new version of that is coming 2020, and a full BEV version is coming as well. And finally, for the news today, well, November brings the second highest market share ever in Norway for EVs, despite it being winter. You think in Norway, in the winter, maybe you've watched Bjorn Nyland's videos, and his most recent ones where he's doing some winter testing of the Kia e-Niro. It looks pretty cold and very snowy in his latest videos. You'd think everyone would be indoors around the fire, but no, they seem to be outside buying cars in Norway. Another hot month where all electric cars are selling like hotcakes, says Inside EVs. Like it. The plug-in hybrid, on the other hand, is not doing too well. 7,001 new passenger plug-ins were registered last month at a market share of 56.9%. The only time that's been beaten was 60.1%, and that was September earlier this year. Inside EVs, looking at their scorecards, say that pure electric cars, battery electric vehicles, BEVs or BEVs, 5,087, it's up 88.1%. And in terms of fuel cell vehicles, somebody, somewhere, actually registered 3 fuel cell vehicles. Heard thunk it. Full link in the show notes to Inside EVs. Now let's get on to your question of the week. These are the questions that we set you every single week. Have been doing it for many, many months now. And it's a really fascinating way, first of all, to hand the show over to you, because this show would be nothing if it was just me talking to myself, although my wife, frankly, would prefer it to me talking to her about EVs non-stop. However, it's also a chance for you, if you have strong opinions on EVs, or maybe you have, as I do, unformed opinions in many ways. Always good to hear other people's opinions, then you can make your own mind up, which is surely a good thing. So we're asking you this week on the podcast, along with our friends at myev.com, question of the week this week is all about China. Would you buy a Chinese EV if it was on the market? Would you like to know more about Chinese EVs? And what would it take to, if you wanted to buy one, the reassurances that you need? Would it be warranties? Would it be a dealer support network? And that's what we were asking you this week. And some fascinating answers, by the way. You can submit your answers on the website myev.com, and anyone can email me anytime if you want to send me a direct email. It's hello@evnewsdaily.com. That's hello@evnewsdaily.com. So would you consider buying an EV from China? Well, the first place you can go, like I say, is the Discuss forums on myev.com. Hello to Phil. Says Phil on the Discuss forums there, says any EV sold in my market, the UK, would be of interest, particularly interesting if the EV had a cost advantage. Bob Cook says my friend in Chile owns several Chinese cars, fossil cars, and sings their praises. I would only buy a Chinese EV if there were no other comparable alternatives available. I don't live in one of those carb or zero-emission states in the US, and only Tesla and Nissan have pure electric cars available, where he writes in from. And hello to Disneymatter. More choices, says he or her. Competition forces innovation and keeps prices competitive. I would love to own a Tesla, but the price is too much of a stretch. And thank you to those who emailed me directly. Hello to John B. John Brooks. I personally think that if the Chinese EVs meet all of the relevant approvals and safety standards, then let them in. They have so many to choose from in China, and the pricing is so very competitive. It can only be a good thing to bring down the prices of other EVs. Hello to Stefan, who says, yes, Chinese electric cars would increase competition in the US and lead to faster innovation, lower costs and greater availability in markets that don't have too much choice at the moment. Early supporter of the podcast, Mark Garnett, says Chinese EVs, yes. With current policies in the USA and the UK and Europe, I suspect China will become the world's main supplier of EVs. So let's learn now, while encouraging local people to make the switch. Hello to Sid EV, Rob, in other words. If you've seen Rob on his online persona on socials and things like that, Sid, S-Y-D, Sid, as in Sydney, Sid EV on Twitter. Always love to follow. I'm sure you might have guessed, he says, I'm from Sydney, Australia. I would be very interested in EVs from China and have no problem with them being sold outside of China as long as they are built to local safety standards like the NCAP safety requirements. And if Tesla are confident in the Chinese build quality to build their cars there, well, I'm sure some of the Chinese EVs would be up to standard for sale outside China. Hello to Elton. Checked his surname. It's not John. I feel left out of this week's question of the week. I live down under. Yes, at the beginning of the week, I was saying that if you're in America or Europe, would you buy a Chinese EV? And then I changed it to if you're outside China, would you buy a Chinese EV? I didn't mean to leave out those down under. I have drooled over many a model only to be disappointed they are only out in China, says Elton, not John, with at least one support centre in the country. So if there was a support centre in New Zealand somewhere, I would be comfortable getting a Chinese model which has reasonable build quality but with a very good price, says Elton, not John. Samuel Price says the Chinese are coming and the legacy companies have real competition. I welcome our new EV overlords with affordable EVs. Hello to Andre. It's pretty simple. Great engineering knows no nationality or boundaries. I know the notion of, he says, like Britain first, America first, has always existed, but that doesn't count with engineering. Actually, I would say in this country, when it comes to cars, although we're proud of our domestic car makers, of course, very proud the Nissan Leaf is made in Sunderland here in the UK, there is also a thing about German engineering in this country. It's long been one of those sort of things that you say, whoa, you know, German engineering, gotta be good. They've got a good reputation for that here in the UK. He says, all vehicles are subjected to rigorous testing and reviews. If the Chinese made vehicles that do well on test, there's no logical reason to curb any country's ability to enter the world marketplace. I hate to oversimplify the topic, says Andre, but there may be more layers, but in an effort to keep my answer brief, it should be wholly considered by everyone if the quality is up there. He does mention there's obviously things like human rights and the political situation there, but he says without going into that, then yes, he would. David Nye says, "G'day, mate. How you bloody doing?" He didn't say that. I added that in. Anyway, my friend David is from Brizzy. He's from Brisbane. Chinese EVs, if they come to Australia, absolutely, the more the better. You'd have to be a drongo not to buy one. He didn't say that. Me ad-libbing. As long as they have good crash-worthy credentials and good warranty. The first Chinese vehicles sold here some time ago had terrible crash ratings, but they've all lifted their game. Thank you very much to David. Hello to LT. LT Kwok says, I'm a new listener to your show. I went to a dealer for a hybrid. I leased a plug-in hybrid instead by accident. Now I'm learning about EVs and my next car is going to be pure electric. Anyway, hello to LT from Northern California, says about China. Sure, yes, if they meet US safety requirements, 200 miles EPA range, and good space inside. Hello to Howdy. Howdy YT says, in the 1970s, we avoided made in Japan. In the 1980s, we avoided made in Taiwan. In the 1990s, we avoided made in China. Things change China's come a long way, says Howdy. China manufactures products with high quality at a good price. Look at smartphones and electronics. Yes, I will consider buying a Chinese-made EV. Ron, who I follow on Twitter, Ron Kerensky, says, I think America is largely over the I only buy American thing. To most, it's about products, really. Timing might be close to right. He says we may need a new president first before Chinese EVs are competitive in the USA. Hello from someone else in Kiwiland, Mark Buckingham. Kia ora, Mark, says, I would buy a car from China as soon as the NCAP rating is 5-star and they stop burning coal. Yes, I know what you mean. There's some interesting... A quick digression, by the way. Chinese CO2, when you look at the country's emissions, have been on a funny old trajectory over the last 20 or 30 years, and it was... some recent news this week, I think, that showed they shot up again. Everyone thought, right, solar, renewables, China comes down, they've saved the world, everything's rosy, job done. And then they had a really big increase for various reasons, which is, more work to be done. Hello to Andrew Jacobs. Of course I'd get a Chinese car as long as it had a big screen at the front, a panoramic glass roof, autopilot, 500 miles range, 500 kilometers range, and do 0 to 100 in less than 5 seconds. Andrew, you're talking about a Tesla. But they make them in China soon, And hello to Jack Oakley, last but never least, keeping off all of the politics and the tariff wars, he said. I would love to hear more about Chinese EVs. What type of EVs are being developed, the battery development, charging infrastructure in China, and I'd like to hear how China's addressing the safe processing of vehicle and battery development, the byproducts and waste. What good are EVs if through the production they create environmental issues? Thank you very much to Jack Oakley for feeding that in. And it's a good thing to know for the podcast, actually, where I'd sometimes miss out some China news. Otherwise, I could make the podcasts an hour a day. Nobody wants that. No, you don't want that much of me. And sometimes I take China news out. And maybe after this question of the week, I've learned something. I think I'm going to put a bit more China news in. I think you want to hear about that just to see how it's going. Let's move on and set a brand new question of the week. This is one for you to answer, and I'd love to hear from you, please. Thanks to myev.com. They've set us another question of the week, and we always have a good old chinwag, normally over email, actually, because they're in the US and I'm here in the UK, but still, we chat on email. Hello to the gang over there, NK and DK and everyone else who works on myev. They set this week's question of the week, and I think this is genius. As we head into 2019, let's find out what's on your mind. So, what would you like me to ask for a future question of the week? I think it's brilliant. It's a bit meta. However, since this started, we've been setting you the questions and you've been answering, thank you very much, on email, on the blog, on myev.com, and let's turn it around for 1 week, and that'll give me a really good idea of what we should be asking in future weeks. And if you want to tell me why you're asking that question as well, that would be good. This is your part of the show after all, so really the ultimate thing is you set question of the week. So as we head into 2019, what's on your mind? What future question of the week would you like me to ask? Let me know. Email hello@evnewsdaily.com. Thank you very much to 130 patrons of the show, whose sheer generosity, frankly, means we get to make this every single day. We do the interviews, we do the road trips, like earlier this week. If you haven't caught up with earlier shows this week, I went to go see the Tesla Model 3 in London. We had a fascinating interview yesterday with Nuvi and Mark Tahon, who is their EVP of marketing, talking about vehicle to grid. Man, he was fascinating. That was our Saturday special. All these interviews and road trips can't be done without your help, so thank you very much. To Phil Roberts. Now, Phil is the MD of Electric Future, and he is our premium partner of the show. And if you want to check out Electric Future, ef.energy, you can do to check out the impressive things that Phil is doing with commercial level solar and PV and battery storage as well, and all things that far above me. Hello to our partners of the show, David Allen, as always. Thank you, David. David Allen, OEM Audio of New Zealand and evpower.co.nz. seem to be picking up more New Zealand listeners, more Kiwis. So if you are there and you need your cables and things like that, check out evpower.co.nz and Sasha Pallenberg as well. And we were chatting this week, myself and Sasha. He has previously built, he's an entrepreneur that's previously built things and moved on from them over the years, but he was just saying, like, I know it's hard work, but keep going. Keep going, you'll get there, wherever there is. But yes, it's hard work, and it was always good to get motivational stuff from Sasha. Hello to our exec producers as well. Alan Robinson on Twitter, who is at Scottish EV Owner. Ashley Hill, Arid Gear Skalsveen. Hello to Bjard Fuchstak. Bob Muir from GingerComputers.com. Brian Weatherall, Cesar Trujillo, Chris Benson, Chris Hopkins, Darren Bird, David Partington, David Prescott, Damian Davis, Don McAllister, Frederick Rovick, our new one, George Clargo, Jack Oakley, Jerry Allison, John Bailey, John H. Mayer III, John Timmis, Kevin Madison, Lars, who we added today on the podcast, Lars Dallager. Hello to Louis Hopkin, Luke Cully, Marcel Lohman, Marcel Ward, Maz Shah, Martin Croft, Matthew Ellis, Matthew Gruby, Neil E. Roberts from Sussex EVs, Paul Stevenson, Paul Seeger-Smith, Philippe Calvet, Raj Bedwell, Renee Schneider, Rod James, Rupert Mitchell, Scott Callahan, and the Limousine Line in Sydney. There are 320 previous episodes of the news show, of interviews, of all sorts of things, in all the places you get podcasts from. If you subscribe, well, you get the show first and free and automatically. In the meantime, catch up with me on the socials, and until we start a brand new week, have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.